The locomotive's headlights pierced the darkness as it thundered along the coastal tracks of Karafuto, Japan. Its rumble echoed through the night, drowning out the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. Below those waves, just 950 yards offshore, the USS Barb waited silently, her presence unknown to the enemy, her crew poised to make history. In the shadowy confines of the submarine, 8 men prepared to embark on a mission never before attempted in naval warfare. Submarine sailors about to set foot on Japanese soil with the singular purpose of bringing the war inland. Little did the Japanese know that this seemingly invincible iron horse would soon become the only train in history to be sunk by a submarine. Before we dive into this extraordinary story, tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? It's incredible to see our historical community spread across the world. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Each subscription helps us continue unearthing these fascinating stories that shaped our world. Now let's get to the story. In the annals of naval warfare, few vessels have compiled a record as remarkable as that of the USS Barb SS-220. A Gato-class submarine commissioned in July 1942, the Barb would eventually earn the Presidential Unit Citation and 4 Navy Crosses for her commander, but the journey to glory was neither immediate nor assured. Like many American submarines early in the war, the Barb's initial patrols proved frustratingly unproductive. Assigned to the Atlantic Theater as part of Submarine Squadron 50, she conducted reconnaissance for Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa, and spent months hunting Axis blockade runners in European waters. By mid-1943, with little to show for her efforts, the submarine was reassigned to the Pacific Fleet. It was in these far eastern waters that the true saga of the USS Barb would unfold. The Pacific Ocean, vast and unforgiving, became both battleground and hunting ground for American submarines as they targeted the Japanese merchant fleet, the lifeline of an island empire dependent on imported resources. By disrupting this maritime supply chain, submarines like the Barb would ultimately help strangle the Japanese war machine. But first, they needed to find their targets and develop the tactics that would make them effective predators in this underwater battle space. The submarine service was perhaps the most dangerous assignment in the American Navy during World War II. Submariners faced not only enemy depth charges and aerial attacks, but also the omnipresent threats of mechanical failure, navigational hazards, and the crushing pressure of the deep ocean. It required a special kind of sailor to volunteer for such duty, men who could maintain their composure in confined quarters under extreme stress, who could function effectively despite the constant awareness that a single mistake could doom the entire vessel. The crew of the USS Barb exemplified these qualities, though in the early days of her service, they had few opportunities to demonstrate their potential. The Atlantic Theater had proven relatively unproductive for American submarines. The German U-boats, designed specifically for commerce raiding, were generally more effective in these waters, while American submarines had been constructed with different strategic considerations in mind. Moreover, the Atlantic shipping lanes were heavily patrolled by Allied surface vessels and aircraft, limiting the operational freedom of all submarines. By contrast, the vast expanses of the Pacific offered American submarines both greater hunting opportunities and more room to maneuver. When the USS Barb departed for Pearl Harbor in the summer of 1943, her crew likely felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation about this new assignment. Pearl Harbor in 1943 was a hive of naval activity, a stark contrast to the devastation wrought by the Japanese attack less than 2 years earlier. The submarine base had expanded significantly as the strategic importance of undersea warfare became increasingly apparent to American military planners. Here, the Barb underwent additional training and modifications to prepare her for the Pacific campaign. The learning curve was steep, and early submarine patrols in the Pacific had suffered from faulty torpedoes, overcautious commanders, and a lack of tactical experience. By the time the Barb arrived, however, many of these issues had been addressed, and American submarines were beginning to take a significant toll on Japanese shipping. The Barb's first Pacific patrol in late 1943 was relatively uneventful, a not uncommon experience for submarines, where long periods of monotony were punctuated by brief moments of intense action. The crew continued to refine their skills, becoming more proficient in the art of stalking and attacking enemy vessels. They learned to differentiate between the various types of Japanese ships based on silhouettes and sound signatures. They practiced crash dives and evasion maneuvers. They became a cohesive unit, each man understanding his role in the complex mechanical organism that was a World War II submarine. But they had yet to fully demonstrate their capabilities. That would change dramatically with the arrival of a new commanding officer. Lieutenant Commander Eugene Bennett Fluckey assumed command of the USS Barb in May 1944. At 31 years of age, Fluckey was relatively young for such a responsibility, but he had already distinguished himself as an executive officer on another submarine, the USS Harder. His combination of technical knowledge, tactical creativity, and natural leadership would prove transformative for the Barb. Known as Lucky Fluckey, though his success owed more to skill and calculated risk-taking than mere fortune, he quickly established a command style that emphasized both aggressive action and crew welfare. Under Fluckey's leadership, the Barb would become one of the most lethal submarines in the Pacific Fleet. The impact was almost immediate. On the Barb's 8th War Patrol, Fluckey's first as commanding officer, the submarine ventured into the Sea of Okhotsk, a remote and hazardous body of water north of the Japanese home islands. Here, on May 31, 1944, they encountered and sank two Japanese transport ships, the Madras Maru and the Koto Maru. This success was followed by the sinking of two trawlers on June 11th, and then two more merchant vessels, the Toten Maru and Chihaya Maru, on the same day. 2 days later, the Barb sank a passenger cargo ship with her last remaining torpedoes. This single patrol had resulted in the destruction of an impressive 15,072 tons of enemy shipping, a harbinger of the Barb's future success. Fluckey's approach to submarine warfare combined methodical planning with opportunistic action. He studied intelligence reports thoroughly, positioned his boat in likely shipping lanes, and then maintained patient vigilance until targets presented themselves. When they did, he acted decisively, maneuvering the Barb for optimal firing positions and often executing multiple attacks on the same convoy. Unlike some submarine commanders who would launch a single spread of torpedoes before withdrawing, Fluckey frequently kept the Barb in the battle, reloading and firing again until either all targets were destroyed or the risk of counterattack became too great. This aggressive approach maximized the submarine's impact during each engagement. Equally important was Fluckey's attention to crew morale and safety. He understood that the men of the Barb were his most valuable asset, and he took extraordinary measures to ensure their welfare. The submarine's mess hall was renowned for serving some of the best food in the fleet, a small but significant comfort during long patrols. Fluckey made a point of recognizing individual contributions to the submarine's success, fostering a sense of pride and shared purpose among the crew. Most notably, he took calculated risks rather than reckless ones, weighing the potential strategic gains against the danger to his men. This approach earned him the unwavering loyalty of the Barb's crew and contributed significantly to their operational effectiveness. By the fall of 1944, the Barb was hitting her stride. On her 9th patrol, she operated as part of a coordinated attack group, or wolf pack, alongside the submarines USS Queenfish and USS Tunney. This tactic, pioneered by German U-boats in the Atlantic, had been adapted by American submariners to great effect in the Pacific. On August 31st, these three submarines converged on a large Japanese convoy in the Manila-Hong Kong sea lanes. In the ensuing action, the Barb sank the 5,600-ton transport Okuni Maru, splitting the vessel in two with well-placed torpedoes. The submarine then had to evade intense counterattacks, including aerial bombing that damaged her port antenna and broke several internal gauges. Not all of the Barb's activities involved attacking enemy vessels. On September 15th of 1944, the submarine participated in a humanitarian rescue mission that demonstrated the versatility of these vessels and the compassion of their crews. A Japanese transport ship carrying Allied prisoners of war had been sunk in the South China Sea, ironically by American submarines unaware of the ship's human cargo. The Barb joined in the search for survivors and ultimately rescued 14 British and Australian POWs who had been adrift on small wooden rafts for days. These men, already weakened by years of brutal captivity, would almost certainly have perished without the intervention of the American submariners. It was a stark reminder that amid the brutality of war, moments of human decency could still prevail. The rescue operation was not without risk. Surfaced submarines were extremely vulnerable to air attack, and the Barb remained on the surface for extended periods while searching for and recovering the POW survivors. The waters were rough due to a passing typhoon, requiring sailors to dive into turbulent seas to help pull the weakened prisoners aboard. The submarine's medical officer and corpsmen worked tirelessly to treat the dehydrated and malnourished men. Space aboard a fleet submarine was always at a premium, and accommodating 14 additional personnel strained the boat's resources. Nevertheless, the Barb's crew shared their quarters, food, and clothing without complaint, recognizing the greater hardships these prisoners had already endured. This humanitarian interlude was brief, however. The war continued unabated, and the Barb soon returned to her primary mission of disrupting enemy shipping. Her 10th patrol, commencing in October 1944, took her to the East China Sea as part of another coordinated attack group. On November 10th, the submarine encountered and sank the Japanese transport Gokoku Maru. These successful hunts continued, but they were becoming increasingly challenging as the war progressed. Japanese anti-submarine measures had improved with better detection equipment, more experienced escort crews, and more effective depth charge patterns. Additionally, as American submarines and aircraft decimated Japan's merchant fleet, the remaining vessels adopted more cautious routes, often hugging coastlines where submarines had difficulty operating without detection. In response to these challenges, Fluckey and other innovative submarine commanders began to adapt their tactics. If the Japanese ships were seeking safety in coastal waters and harbors, then the submarines would need to pursue them there despite the increased risks. This approach would reach its apotheosis in the Barb's 11th War Patrol, a mission so extraordinary that it would earn Fluckey the Medal of Honor and the submarine a Presidential Unit Citation. Departing on December 19, 1944, the Barb headed for the coast of China and the Formosa Strait, areas known to have heavy Japanese shipping traffic, but also strong defensive measures. The defining moment of this patrol came on January 8, 1945, when the Barb encountered a Japanese ship that had been attacked earlier by other submarines, but remained afloat. Rather than simply finishing it off with torpedoes, Fluckey took the unusual step of putting a boarding party aboard the damaged vessel. The sailors retrieved documents, equipment, and other items of potential intelligence value before sinking the ship with gunfire. This type of operation was rare for submarines and demonstrated Fluckey's willingness to go beyond conventional tactics when opportunities arose. The intelligence gathered would prove valuable for future operations, providing insights into Japanese shipping practices and defensive measures. The truly historic action of the 11th Patrol occurred on January 23, 1945, when Fluckey, aided by ultra-intelligence, decrypted Japanese communications, discovered a significant concentration of enemy ships in Namquan Harbor near the coast of China. Conventional wisdom dictated that submarines avoid such confined spaces, where their limited maneuverability made them vulnerable to counterattack and where shallow waters increased the risk of grounding. Fluckey, however, saw an opportunity too valuable to ignore. He decided to take the Barb into the harbor after midnight for a surprise surface attack, a maneuver he described to his crew as one of our well-known calculated risks. The plan was audacious, but meticulously planned. The Barb would enter the harbor under cover of darkness, launch torpedoes at the anchored ships, and then withdraw at maximum speed through uncharted waters to reach the safety of deeper ocean approximately 20 miles offshore. The element of surprise was crucial. If Japanese defenders realized what was happening soon enough to organize an effective response, the submarine would be in grave danger. Adding to the complexity, the harbor waters were shallow enough that the Barb would have limited options for evasion if detected. Every man aboard understood the risks, but they also recognized the potential impact of a successful attack on so many gathered targets. In the early morning hours of January 25, 1945, the Barb slipped into Namquan Harbor. The submarine moved quietly through the darkness, her silhouette barely visible against the night sky. As she approached the concentration of enemy vessels, Flucky ordered, "Battle station, torpedoes!" The submarine launched her forward torpedoes at a range of 3,000 yards, targeting the largest ships visible in the harbor. The torpedoes streaked toward their targets, leaving telltale wakes in the water. Minutes later, explosions rocked the harbor as multiple torpedoes found their marks. Japanese ships began to sink, while others were severely damaged. Confusion reigned among the enemy as they struggled to determine the source of the attack. With torpedoes away and chaos erupting throughout the harbor, Flucky ordered the Barb to withdraw at maximum speed. The submarine raced for the harbor entrance and the relative safety of the open ocean beyond. Japanese defensive fire was scattered and ineffective, the surprise of the attack having disorganized their response. The Barb successfully navigated the treacherous shallow waters and reached deeper ocean without sustaining damage. This single action resulted in the confirmed sinking of 4 large Japanese ships, with a combined tonnage of approximately 30,000 tons, making it one of the most successful individual submarine attacks of the war. For this extraordinary achievement, Flucky was awarded the Medal of Honor, and the entire crew received the Presidential Unit Citation. The citation accompanying Flucky's Medal of Honor captured the significance of this action. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty as commanding officer of the USS Barb during her 11th War Patrol along the east coast of China from 19th December 1944 to 15th February 1945. After sinking a large enemy ammunition ship and damaging additional tonnage during a running 2-hour night battle on 8th January, Commander Flucky, in an exceptional feat of brilliant deduction and bold tracking on 23rd January, located a concentration of more than 30 enemy ships in the lower reaches of Nanquan Chiang, Namquan Harbor. Fully aware that a safe retirement would necessitate an hour's run at full speed through the uncharted, mined, and rock-obstructed waters, he bravely ordered, "Battle station, torpedoes!" In a daring penetration of the heavy enemy screen and riding in 5 fathoms of water, he launched the Barb's last forward torpedoes at 3,000-yard range. Quickly bringing the submarine's stern tubes to bear, he turned loose 4 more torpedoes into the enemy, obtaining 8 direct hits on 6 of the main targets to explode a large ammunition ship and cause inestimable damage by the resultant flying shells and other pyrotechnics. Clearing the treacherous area at high speed, he brought the Barb through to safety, and 4 days later sank a large Japanese freighter to complete a record of heroic combat achievement, reflecting the highest credit upon Commander Flucky, his gallant officers and men, and the United States Naval Service. Following this spectacularly successful patrol, the Barb returned to the United States for an overhaul at the Mare Island Navy Yard in California. This maintenance period provided an opportunity for equipment upgrades and crew rest after the intense operations of the previous months. It was during this refit that Flucky requested an unprecedented modification to the submarine, the installation of 5-inch rocket launchers on her deck. No American submarine had ever been equipped with such weapons before, but Flucky recognized their potential for shore bombardment operations. With Japanese shipping becoming increasingly scarce and better protected, the ability to strike land targets would give the Barb a new capability to continue contributing to the war effort. After some initial skepticism, naval authorities approved the modification and the rocket launchers were installed. The Barb's 12th and final war patrol began on June 8, 1945. By this stage of the war, American forces had advanced across the Pacific, recapturing numerous islands and establishing air and naval bases ever closer to Japan itself. The strategic bombing campaign against Japanese cities was intensifying, and plans were being developed for an eventual invasion of the home islands. The submarine force continued to play a crucial role in maintaining the blockade of Japan, interdicting the remaining shipping that sustained the Japanese war economy. For the Barb, however, this patrol would be unlike any previous mission, as the submarine would employ both her traditional weapons and her new rocket launchers in innovative ways. The patrol area assigned to the Barb was the Sea of Okhotsk and the waters around Hokkaido and Karafuto, Sakhalin. These northern regions were less heavily patrolled than the approaches to major Japanese ports, potentially offering better hunting opportunities for the increasingly scarce Japanese merchant vessels. The submarine arrived in her patrol area on June 20th and immediately began searching for targets. It did not take long for Flucky to find an opportunity to test the Barb's new rocket weapons. On June 22nd, at approximately 2:30 a.m., the submarine surfaced off the town of Sherry on the northeast coast of Hokkaido Island. The target was an industrial district visible from the submarine's position offshore. The rocket launch procedure required careful coordination. The gunnery crew unstrapped the launcher from its storage position and raised it to the desired angle. An electrical line was run from the launcher to a firing switch in the conning tower. Flucky, on the bridge, donned polarized goggles to protect his eyes from the expected flash and gave the order, "Rockets away." The launch produced a brilliant blue-white flame as 12 rockets lifted off from the submarine's deck and arced toward their target. Approximately 1 minute later, multiple buildings in the factory district erupted in flames as the rockets found their marks. It was the first rocket attack conducted by a submarine in history, and it was remarkably successful. The Barb quickly submerged and departed the area before Japanese defenders could organize a response. Encouraged by this success, Flucky planned additional rocket attacks on other coastal targets. In the following days, the Barb launched similar strikes against the towns of Shikuka, Kashiho, and Shiritoru on Karafuto. These operations typically followed the same pattern. The submarine would approach under cover of darkness, surface briefly to launch rockets at visible shore installations, and then withdraw before effective countermeasures could be deployed. The psychological impact of these attacks should not be underestimated. Japanese civilians and military personnel in these remote coastal regions had largely been spared direct attack during the war. The sudden appearance of submarine-launched rockets must have been deeply unsettling, suggesting that no part of Japan was truly secure from Allied reach. On July 2, 1945, the Barb conducted a more conventional bombardment of a Japanese garrison on Kaihio Island just off the coast of Sakhalin. Using her deck gun rather than rockets, the submarine destroyed multiple buildings and caused a significant fire at the installation. An attempt to put a landing party ashore was aborted when alert lookouts spotted 4 Japanese pillboxes overlooking the harbor. This would not be the last time the Barb considered a landing operation, however. As the patrol continued, Flucky and his officers were constantly seeking new ways to strike at the enemy, particularly as traditional submarine targets became scarce. The submarine continued her aggressive patrol, sinking several small cargo ships and coastal defense vessels when opportunities arose. But a new target had caught Flucky's attention. Through his periscope, he had observed trains running along the coastal tracks of Karafuto, visible from the submarine's position offshore. These trains were undoubtedly carrying troops, supplies, and war materiel to support the Japanese defensive preparations. "Now there's a target I would like to blow up," Flucky remarked to his officers. What might have seemed like an idle comment sparked a serious discussion about the feasibility of attacking a land-based target that had never before been considered within the realm of submarine warfare. Chief of the boat Paul Swish Saunders, the submarine's senior enlisted man and a veteran of all the Barb's war patrols, took Flucky's comment to heart. He spread a topographic map showing the Japanese rail lines across a table and began to study the possibilities. The concept that emerged was audacious. Send a small team of submariners ashore to plant explosives on the railroad tracks. When a train passed over the charge, it would detonate, destroying both the tracks and the train itself. The operation would be extremely dangerous, requiring the landing party to infiltrate enemy territory, plant explosives, and withdraw without being detected. If captured, there would be no possibility of rescue so deep in enemy-controlled land. The technical aspects presented another challenge. How could the explosives be detonated at precisely the right moment to destroy a passing train? The solution came from an unexpected source. Electrician's mate, third-class Billy Hatfield, recalled how, as a boy, he had placed nuts between railroad ties. When trains passed overhead, the pressure would crack the shells. Hatfield suggested adapting this childhood prank into a detonation mechanism. A micro-switch could be placed on the rails that would complete a circuit when the weight of a train pressed down on it, triggering the explosion. For the explosive charge itself, they would use the Barb's 55-pound scuttling charge, normally reserved for destroying the submarine if capture was imminent. The device would be wired to batteries and packed into an empty pickle can for waterproof transport to shore. Flucky considered the proposal carefully. The potential benefits were significant. Destroying a train would disrupt enemy logistics and demonstrate American reach even onto Japanese home soil. The risks were equally substantial. The landing party could be killed or captured, and the submarine would be vulnerable while waiting near shore for their return. After weighing these factors, Flucky decided to proceed with the operation, but with careful planning to minimize the dangers. When he called for volunteers, every man aboard the Barb raised his hand, a testament to the crew's fighting spirit and their trust in their commander. Unable to take everyone who volunteered, Flucky established criteria for selection. He wanted physically fit men with good communication skills and survival instincts. He particularly favored those who had been Boy Scouts, reasoning that their outdoor training might prove valuable if the men needed to evade capture in unfamiliar terrain. Most importantly, he selected only unmarried men, unwilling to risk making any wives into widows should the mission fail. In the end, 8 men were chosen: Chief Gunner's Mate, Paul G. Saunders; Electrician's Mate, 3rd Class, Billy R. Hatfield; Signalman, 2nd Class, Francis N. Seavey; Ship's Cook, 1st Class, Lawrence W. Newland; Torpedoman's Mate, 3rd Class, Edward W. Klingesmith; Motor Machinist's Mate, 2nd Class, James E. Richard; Motor Machinist's Mate, 1st Class, John Markison; and Lieutenant William M. Walker. With the team selected, preparations began in earnest. The men practiced small boat handling and shore landing techniques. They familiarized themselves with the explosive device and detonation mechanism. They studied the limited maps available of the landing area and developed contingency plans for various scenarios. Flucky provided them with a sobering instruction. If they were stranded, they should head for Soviet territory approximately 130 miles to the north, following mountain ranges to avoid populated areas. It was a long shot, but better than no escape plan at all. The operation would proceed only when weather conditions were favorable. They needed cloud cover to reduce visibility from shore, but relatively calm seas for the small boat journey. On July 22, 1945, the conditions finally aligned. The sky was overcast, providing good concealment, and the sea was manageable for small boat operations. The Barb took position approximately 950 yards offshore from the target area on the east coast of Karafuto. At midnight, final preparations began. The landing party donned dark clothing and blackened their faces with burnt cork to reduce visibility. They checked their weapons. Each man carried a pistol, and several had submachine guns for emergency use, only if discovered. The explosive device was carefully packed for transport, along with tools needed for installation. The 2 rubber boats were inflated and lowered over the side. Just after midnight on July 23rd, the 8-man team embarked on their historic mission. Flucky's parting words to the shore party were both encouraging and realistic. "Boys, if you get stuck, head for Siberia, 130 miles north, following the mountain ranges. Good luck." He also made it clear that the submarine could only remain in the area for a limited time, approximately 3 hours, before it would need to withdraw to avoid detection, with or without the landing party. Everyone understood that this mission carried no guarantee of return. As the rubber boats disappeared into the darkness, the Barb maintained her position offshore, running at minimum speed to avoid detection, while remaining close enough to recover the shore party upon their return. The journey to shore was tense, but uneventful. The men paddled quietly, avoiding unnecessary conversation and keeping a vigilant watch for Japanese patrols. Upon reaching the beach, they carefully concealed the rubber boats and established a security perimeter. 3 men remained as lookouts while the others moved inland toward the railroad tracks, carrying the explosive device and installation tools. To their alarm, they discovered they had landed near a Japanese house, but fortunately the occupants remained asleep and unaware of the Americans moving stealthily nearby. The track was located approximately 250 yards inland, close enough to reach quickly, but far enough from the shore to reduce the risk of immediate discovery. As the demolition team worked to place the charge beneath the railroad ties and set up the micro-switch trigger, a train suddenly approached. The sailors dropped flat to avoid detection as the locomotive roared past, its headlights sweeping the surrounding area. The close call increased the men's sense of urgency. They needed to complete their task and return to the submarine before their luck ran out. Once the train had passed, they resumed their work, digging beneath a rail tie to create space for the explosive device. The micro-switch was carefully positioned to ensure it would be compressed by the weight of a passing train, completing the circuit that would detonate the charge. With the improvised bomb successfully planted, the landing party retreated to their boats and began paddling back toward the submarine. Halfway to safety, another train approached the sabotaged section of track. The sailors paused momentarily to witness the culmination of their mission. At precisely 1:47 a.m., the locomotive crossed the micro-switch, completing the circuit. The resulting explosion was spectacular. The train's boilers ruptured, sending wreckage 200 feet into the air in a massive fireball. 16 rail cars derailed in a chaotic tangle of twisted metal and flame. The mission had succeeded beyond their most optimistic expectations. By 1:52 a.m., all 8 men had safely returned to the Barb. The entire operation had taken less than 2 hours. As the submarine moved away from the coast, Commander Flucky ordered all non-essential personnel to the deck to witness the distant fireworks display of the burning train. It was a moment of celebration and accomplishment for the entire crew. The submarine had just achieved something unprecedented in naval warfare. It had sunk a land target. When the Barb's battle flag was later updated, it included a unique symbol among the tally of ships destroyed, a train, the only such marking on any submarine's battle flag in history. The destruction of the train was more than just a symbolic victory. It represented a direct attack on Japanese logistics in a region critical to their defensive preparations. The psychological impact was also significant. American forces had now demonstrated the ability to strike not just from the air or sea, but directly on Japanese soil. The 8 men who conducted the raid became the only American combatants to set foot on Japanese home islands in an offensive operation during World War II. Their successful mission foreshadowed the development of special operations capabilities that would become increasingly important in later conflicts. The Barb's 12th patrol continued for several more days. with additional rocket attacks on coastal targets and the sinking of several small vessels. On August 2, 1945, the submarine returned to Midway Island, her war service effectively complete. Just days later, atomic bombs would fall on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bringing the Pacific War to its conclusion. By the final tally, the USS Barb was credited with sinking 17 enemy vessels, totaling 96,028 tons, placing her among the most successful American submarines of World War II. More remarkably, she had accomplished all of this without losing a single crewman to enemy action, a testament to Flucky's leadership and the crew's professionalism. The recognition for the Barb's extraordinary service was substantial. Commander Eugene Flucky received the Medal of Honor for the Nam Quan harbor attack, along with 4 Navy Crosses for other actions during his command of the submarine. This made him one of the most decorated submarine commanders in U.S. naval history. The Barb herself received the Presidential Unit Citation, Navy Unit Commendation, and 8 battle stars for her World War II service. Chief of the boat Paul "Swish" Saunders was recognized as one of the Navy's most decorated enlisted men, receiving 2 Silver Stars, 1 Bronze Star, and numerous other awards for his service throughout the Barb's 12 war patrols. In the hierarchy of American submarine aces, Flucky ranked first in tonnage sunk, with the Barb accounting for approximately 96,000 tons of enemy shipping. His innovative tactics had revolutionized submarine warfare, from harbor penetration attacks to rocket bombardments to land operations. Perhaps most significantly, he had accomplished these feats while maintaining his commitment to the safety of his crew. As Flucky would later write in his memoir, "No one who ever served under my command was awarded the Purple Heart for being wounded or killed, and all of us brought our Barb back safe and sound." In an environment as dangerous as submarine warfare in World War II, this achievement was remarkable. The post-war career of the USS Barb was less dramatic but still significant. After a period in reserve, she was recommissioned in December 1951 and assigned to the Atlantic Fleet, operating out of Key West, Florida. The submarine served in this capacity until February 1954, when she was decommissioned for conversion under the Greater Underwater Propulsion Power Program, GUPPY, which modernized World War II submarines for continued service in the early Cold War era. After this conversion was completed, the Barb was recommissioned in August 1954, but only briefly. In December of that year, she was decommissioned again and loaned to Italy under the Mutual Defense Assistance Program. Renamed Enrico Tazzoli by the Italian Navy, the former Barb continued to serve for many years. She operated as part of NATO's Maritime Defense Force in the Mediterranean, helping to counter the growing Soviet submarine presence in this strategically vital region. The submarine remained in Italian service until 1972, when she was finally sold for scrap, ending a 30-year career spanning 2 navies and 2 distinct eras of naval warfare. Admiral Flucky would later remark that had he and his crew known of this fate, they would have purchased the vessel themselves to preserve her as a museum ship, given her historic significance. The story of the USS Barb offers multiple dimensions of historical significance. At the tactical level, it demonstrates how innovation and calculated risk-taking could amplify the effectiveness of conventional weapons platforms. Strategically, it illustrates the vital role that submarines played in isolating Japan from its resource dependencies, contributing significantly to Allied victory in the Pacific. On the human level, it exemplifies the importance of leadership that balances audacity with concern for personnel. Flucky's pride in returning with all his men alive stands in marked contrast to commanders who achieved results at any cost. The technological innovations pioneered or demonstrated by the Barb also had lasting significance. The use of submarine-launched rockets prefigured the development of submarine-launched cruise missiles that would become a cornerstone of naval strategy in the Cold War era. The Barb's shore bombardment capabilities demonstrated the potential for submarines to engage in direct fire support of land operations, a concept that would be refined in later conflicts. Even the improvised explosive device used to destroy the train reflected the ingenuity and adaptability that characterized American forces at their best, making the most of available resources to accomplish challenging missions. The landing party that destroyed the Japanese train also serves as an interesting footnote in the evolution of special operations. While not special forces in the modern sense, these 8 submariners conducted what would today be classified as a special operation, a covert insertion into enemy territory for sabotage purposes. Some military historians have suggested that this operation, along with others conducted by unconventional units during World War II, helped inform the development of modern special forces concepts. It's perhaps no coincidence that the standard SEAL squad consists of 8 men, the same number as the Barb's landing party. In the broader sweep of World War II history, the Barb's train raid remains significant as the only American ground combat operation conducted on Japanese home islands prior to the planned invasion that never came. While strategic bombing campaigns had brought destruction from the air and naval bombardments had struck from the sea, this small-scale raid represented the only time American boots touched Japanese soil in a combat capacity during the war. The psychological impact of such operations should not be underestimated. The knowledge that enemy forces could penetrate to the home islands undoubtedly contributed to Japanese anxiety about their increasingly vulnerable position. The legacy of the USS Barb endures in naval tradition and popular history. In 2020, the U.S. Navy announced that a future Virginia-class submarine, SSN 804, would be named USS Barb in honor of her World War II predecessor, ensuring that the name and the accomplishments it represents will continue to inspire future generations of submariners. The original submarine's battle flag, with its unique train symbol, remains on display at the Submarine Force Library and Museum in Groton, Connecticut. Commander Fluckey's memoir, Thunder Below, published decades after the war, brought the Barb's exploits to a wider audience and remains a compelling account of submarine warfare. The story of the Barb also serves as a reminder of the critical role that the submarine force played in the Pacific War. Often overshadowed in popular memory by the island-hopping campaigns, carrier battles, and strategic bombing, submarine warfare was nonetheless decisive in strangling Japan's maritime supply lines. American submarines, constituting less than 2% of the U.S. Navy's total personnel, sank more than 30% of all Japanese warships destroyed during the conflict and more than 60% of the Japanese merchant fleet. This devastating toll on shipping prevented raw materials from reaching Japanese factories and finished war goods from reaching the front lines, significantly undermining Japan's ability to continue the war. The human element of the Barb story is equally important. The submarine's crew represented a cross-section of American society, men from diverse backgrounds and regions, brought together by the exigencies of war and forged into a cohesive fighting unit by shared experience and effective leadership. Their individual stories of courage, ingenuity, and perseverance reflected the broader American war effort. From Commander Fluckey's tactical brilliance to electrician's mate Hatfield's childhood-inspired detonator design, each man contributed his unique skills and perspective to the submarine's success. The operational environment in which the Barb and other Pacific Fleet submarines functioned was exceptionally challenging. Beyond the ever-present danger of enemy action, submariners contended with cramped living conditions, limited fresh food and water, stale air, and the psychological pressure of operating in enemy-controlled waters far from support. Patrols typically lasted 60 days or more, during which the crew might experience extended periods of monotony, punctuated by moments of extreme danger. The ability to maintain operational effectiveness under these conditions required extraordinary physical and mental resilience from every man aboard. Communication was another significant challenge. Unlike surface vessels, submarines could not maintain continuous radio contact with their headquarters. They would typically receive general patrol orders before departure and then operate independently until their return, making tactical decisions based on the commander's judgment rather than real-time direction from higher authority. This operational autonomy placed enormous responsibility on submarine commanders like Fluckey, who needed to balance aggressive action against the safety of their vessels and crews without the benefit of immediate consultation with superiors. The success of the Barb demonstrated the effectiveness of this decentralized command approach when placed in capable hands. The submarine's innovative attacks on land targets during her final patrol also highlighted the adaptability of the U.S. Navy as the war progressed. As Japan's merchant fleet diminished and strategic priorities evolved, submarine missions expanded beyond their original focus on commerce raiding. The Barb's rocket attacks and train raid exemplified this evolution, finding new ways to contribute to the war effort when traditional targets became scarce. This adaptability would be a hallmark of American submarine operations in the post-war era as well, as the force transitioned from diesel-electric boats focused on anti-shipping operations to nuclear-powered vessels with diverse strategic capabilities. The Barb's operations also demonstrated the integration of intelligence with tactical execution. Fluckey made extensive use of available intelligence, including decrypted Japanese communications, ultra-intelligence, to position his submarine where it could inflict maximum damage. The Namquan Harbor attack, in particular, highlighted the value of actionable intelligence combined with bold tactical implementation. As the war progressed, this intelligence operations integration became increasingly sophisticated, allowing American forces to target Japanese vulnerabilities with greater precision. The Barb's success in this regard foreshadowed the central role that intelligence would play in submarine operations during the Cold War. In the decades since World War II, naval warfare has evolved dramatically, with technological advances transforming submarines from the diesel-electric boats of the Barb's era to today's nuclear-powered behemoths capable of remaining submerged for months at a time. Yet the fundamental lessons of the Barb's success remain relevant. The value of tactical innovation, the importance of leadership that balances audacity with prudence, and the critical role of crew cohesion and morale in combat effectiveness. These principles continue to inform submarine operations in the modern era, ensuring that the Barb's legacy extends beyond the historical record to influence ongoing naval practice. The submarine service has always attracted a certain type of individual, those comfortable with risk, capable of functioning in confined spaces, and able to maintain composure under extreme pressure. The crew of the USS Barb exemplified these traits, while adding adaptability and innovative thinking that set them apart even within this elite community. When faced with diminishing conventional targets, they didn't simply continue with established tactics, they pioneered new ones, literally expanding their battlefield from sea to shore and ultimately to land. This willingness to reimagine the possible represents the best of American military tradition, combining technological advantage with creative application to overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. From her inauspicious beginnings in the Atlantic to her revolutionary final patrol in the waters off Japan, the USS Barb's war service traced an arc of increasing effectiveness and innovation. Under Commander Fluckey's leadership, the submarine and her crew transformed from hunters of opportunity to architects of opportunity, creating new methods of attack when conventional approaches proved insufficient. In doing so, they not only contributed significantly to the Allied victory in the Pacific, but also expanded the conceptual boundaries of submarine warfare itself. The train raid, in particular, stands as a testament to their ingenuity and daring, a singular achievement that has rightfully earned its place in naval lore. As we reflect on the USS Barb's remarkable story from the vantage point of the 21st century, we're reminded that military effectiveness often stems not just from superior technology or numerical advantage, but from the human elements of leadership, creativity, and courage. In the confined space of a World War II submarine, under the pressure of combat against a determined enemy, the officers and crew of the Barb demonstrated these qualities in abundance. Their story stands as testimony to what can be accomplished when conventional limitations are viewed not as barriers, but as challenges to be overcome through innovation and calculated boldness. The submarine that sank a train remains a powerful symbol of American military ingenuity and the indomitable human spirit in the face of adversity.